Hi everybody, Tim Hughes here. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite. With me today I've got Noah Healy, and we're going to be talking about game theory and how that can transform financial services. It's going to be an interesting one. This one, Noah. Before we start, I'm actually going to apologise and say I've spelt your name wrong. You spelt it right. It's Healy with one e, not two e's. So I'm really sorry about that. But go ahead and tell people where they can find you.
So I've got a website for more about the ideas we'll be talking about at coordisc.com, Coordisc. Noah Healy with the Healy spelling on LinkedIn will find me, or Noah P. Healy at yahoo.com if you want to reach out through email. I'm always happy to talk about these things with interested parties.
And we'll ask you about those again at the end. So and certainly I'll put it in the show notes when I put it onto to YouTube. So
Okay.
give me a little bit about your background, because you've been involved. You're a big maths person. You've been into game theory, and so talk us through that.
Well, mathematics has basically been a part of my life since I was introduced to it. Um, in grade school, I was part of several different accelerator programs, which led to me starting college attendance during my high school days. And then once I got to college, I was more interested in math than other topics. I was studying engineering, but I had at least one math class dur- eh, math class in every semester.
Yep.
And then I got out and got into programming and hadn't really trained programming. My training was in nuclear engineering, and so I was teaching myself the language that they were using at the company I was working for, but also learning some of these other deeper concepts around languages and compilers and regular expressions and parsing and all these things, and just really fell in love with it. And so for the last 20 years, it's been my vocation and avocation
Mm,
to study math and use that professionally as a programmer or data scientist.
right. And I did electrical electronic engineering, and there was loads of maths involved in that, and it was it's beautiful to see also the natural world um, being described in mathematical terms. I find that as well. Radio waves was something that always amazed me in the way that things could change. Um, yeah, go.
Yeah. Well, there's a fun example of that, because with electronics, of course, one of the things that is most convenient for doing electromagnetic waves is complex numbers,
Mm,
which includes the square root of -1, which was a formalism that goes back to basically the Middle Ages, where it was so anathema. That's why they decided to call them imaginary numbers, and then it turns out to be directly and intimately connected to things like the electromagnetic spectrum, which of course is one of the fundamental forces that shapes our universe.
yes. So you've been doing some work around game theory and game strategy. So talk us through that.
So, game theory is the mathematics of strategy, and probably the most famous explanation of these was in the movie A Beautiful Mind,
Yeah.
which is a story about John Nash, who got the economics Nobel for his work on the Nash equilibrium in game theory. And the Nash equilibrium is basically about a way for, even in competitive systems, multiple agents to all pursue strategies which are to their general benefit. Um, and one of the interesting insights of the Nash equilibrium is that in what's called an evolutionary game, the system will converge towards its Nash equilibriums. And evolutionary games mean kind of what they sound like. So, evolution itself is an evolutionary game. It's a system where uh, participants fall into one of or several of a handful of roles, and each role um, is effectively playing against the other roles. So a predator-prey system can evolve towards a relatively small number of predators versus a large number of prey animals, because that equilibrium will sort of hold things in place, and so on. So where my discovery comes in is a way to add computer players or a computer player to that system to change where the Nash equilibrium is in a way that's advantageous to all of the participants, by essentially making people waste less time attempting to deceive one another.
There's it's a beautiful film, and if I recall, you get him working it out in the bar. I think there's a scene in the bar.
There is, it's yes, the scene
And
with the blonde.
yeah, and it's a scene in a bar, and it's students going to a bar and having a drink and finding, let's say, finding friends,
Sure.
um, and it's a beautiful way of describing it through Hollywood storytelling, but without being technical at all. And
Right.
you move into this scene, and it describes the scene, and then it tells you what it's just told you, and you go, "Oh my god, I thought that was really technical. Well, I didn't.
Uh,
I understood all that."
yeah, yeah. Well, that's one of the interesting things, I think, particularly about game theory and computational math, and really a lot of 20th century mathematics, um, is that the it's sort of a metaphysics of arithmetic, if you will. And so it's a lot of words, it's a lot of logic and reasoning, and it's not as much, five apples and then, shared among three people type of questions. Um, and so these things do have stories that can describe them. And uh, the caveat is that the stories tend to be somewhat stylized. And so people, upon hearing the stories, can sometimes just sort of step in and say, well, I would just talk to the person, or something like that. And of course, the mathematics is sort of bound up in the story structure as it is, rather than something else. So uh, uh, that's the caveat. There is a technical underlayer, that sort of makes everything formal and firm. But if you're sort of willing to go with the necessary parts of the premises, then these things are part of the natural world, and part of the normal part of socialization that people are familiar with from their day-to-day lives.
It's one of those films that you actually I needed to see it twice. There was a whole genre of films that were created where you had to go and see them twice, because the whole point was you paid twice to go to the cinema, and that's one of them, because there's a number of things that happen where you go, what happened there? What happened? And you need to, and it's only when you get to the end when you realize what happened there, and then once you actually know it kind of gives you the key to the lock to actually unlock the film to see it completely differently.
Yes, indeed.
So tell us more about, you've talked about, using game theory in terms of marketplace, especially around purchasing of commodities and stuff. So when we talk about commodities, we're talking about oil and wheat and things like that, aren't we?
Absolutely, yeah. So my observation is that the normal deal of a buyer and seller does involve the commodity product and money, which people are very used to.
Mm.
But a deal also requires a meeting of the minds, and that is effectively an information thing.
Yeah.
The possessor of, say, the oil, and the money that wants to buy the oil, both need to know that it's beneficial to themselves to enter into this deal. And that is actually replicated across many, many deals, because there are multiple producers of oil or copper or wheat or corn or cotton or whatever. And so the price levels need to reach points at which the producers all find it beneficial to themselves to produce, and the consumers all find it beneficial to themselves to consume. And so, what's actually going on is there's a federated information across many players on each side of the system. And so, what my system allows you to do is to create effectively a third part of the marketplace in that information and separate the provision of the commodity or service, the desire or demand with its money or currency, and the negotiation or forecasting information that mediates between them is three separate activities that, again, going back to this evolutionary game Nash equilibrium, will all converge upon each other and provide a sort of globally transparent and fair marketplace for all the participants.
So why is it different to what it is right now?
Well, the existing system does acknowledge the value of global understanding, and that's what the market ticker is about. You get to see the deals that actually happen, but the existing system is entirely focused on one-to-one trades,
Right.
um, which is reasonably sensible because no single person can obviously be engaged in anything other than a one-to-one trade.
So I'm going to buy 100 tons of wheat, and I'm given a price, and I either buy it or I don't.
Exactly. Yeah. And so that's just you. You're out there. You wanted 100 tons of wheat for presumably some useful reason.
Mm.
And that's what's going on. Um, the difficulty is that there's sort of not enough players in the game to keep one-to-one trades going at all times. So what evolves is interstitial middlemen, people who buy and sell
Yeah.
and keep up the buying and selling between themselves when the other participants slack off. And with the advent now of computers and the internet and communications and so on, the speed and amount of that now vastly exceeds human abilities to keep up with. And so what's happened is that the marketplaces have actually become less stable as a result of improved technology, which is, kind of exactly what we don't want to happen. Um, and so this remedies that. It's performing the same services as sort of the previous ways, but it's not doing it in the same fashion. And it's doing it in a fashion that our technology doesn't break down at a fundamental level.
So I saw something about NFTs, which is where what was happening with the NFTs was that the NFT was being bought by the same person who then sold it and then bought it and then sold it and bought it, and basically did that by upping the price. And at the same time, that same person then was going online and saying NFTs are amazing, you need to get into them. And then what happened was that it got bought and sold by the same person, and then someone came in and paid a whole big price for it. And so that in effect, the whole that in that particular trade, I'm not saying that all of the NFT trades, but in that particular trade for that NFT, the reason why it was a particular price was because the same person kept buying it and selling it.
Yes, yes. And so those are called pump and dump scams
Yes.
for what are obvious reasons. Um, that's sort of a first order kind of a scam, if you will. Um, but as I was saying, the existing markets basically involve a bunch of people trading with each other. And so you can reach a situation where they're not just bidding prices up, they can bid prices crazy, essentially. So they can bid prices up and then down and up and then down and do it hundreds or thousands of times a second if they feel like it. And so then when you just walk in, so, like if you walk into the grocery store, the prices are just what the prices are. maybe once in a blue moon, there's a guy out there with the tape machine on, and they're changing the prices for the week, and you might get off a little bit, but basically the prices are what the prices are. But what if that wasn't the way it worked? What if the prices were going up and down 10% all the time? And when you picked it up off the shelf, there was like an LED thing on there that was bouncing up and down. And when you finally got up, whatever it hit when it scanned is what the number was. Well, you wouldn't be able to shop the same way. You'd have to be a little bit more concerned. And of course, how do you know when the thing's going past the beep? Um, maybe when they're scanned, they're all the highest price they can possibly be.
Yeah.
Uh, and so that's more or less what happens, is that these markets are highly volatile, and what winds up happening is the buyers accept buying for more than they sort of ordinarily would if they were able to directly contract, whereas the sellers put up with selling for less than they would be able to sell for if they were able to directly contract. But they need that global information, because each one of these people is very small in sort of the abstract. So they don't have market power. So if they were to sort of leave the marketplace and just kind of go out there and try to find, their own, it would be relatively easy. In many cases already exists. There would be a large counterparty that would be able to give them prices that were even worse, because once they don't have the marketplace backing them up, there's no reason not to take advantage of them.
So, is there a practical way that this could be implemented, or is this something that could be seen as actually helping people? I mean, people will always buyers will always want to buy at the lowest price, and sellers will always want to sell at the highest price. So,
Yes. Well, the thing that's important to understand about that is that profitability isn't just about the unit price that you're receiving. It's also about the amount of sales that you can actually do. And so, in an environment where you were able to sell your wheat for more, but you couldn't sell as much wheat as you can actually grow, you may well wind up losing money in such a world, because you spent the money to grow the wheat and now it's going to go rot in the fields or something. Um, so the the actual kind of ideal, which the markets are attempting to approximate, is a situation where people are maximizing their profitability. And if wheat isn't really the crop that works for them on their land, maybe they're growing beans or tomatoes or something else instead.
yeah.
Um, so in that context, uh, finding that price that both sides can agree to and causes the most actual deal flow is actually what's in the individual interests as well as the common interest. Uh, in terms of the practicality of implementation, there are a couple implementations of the mechanism. Integration of the mechanism into an actual marketplace is something that's still actually ongoing. I'm
Right.
working with a few different people around the world to integrate this mechanism into their marketplace, and I'm searching around the world for other people with marketplaces or the desire to found marketplaces that want something like this to help them out.
So, if there's somebody watching this now or in the future, what would it you'd want them to get in touch with you? What was it that you would want?
Absolutely. Please reach out to me if you're in that position. If you buy or sell commodities in large amounts, or you're a broker or a marketplace operator, certainly, and would like to explore a more efficient mechanism for markets themselves, please do reach out to me. And yeah, there's a white paper online. You can research this yourself if you want. Is also
So, remind people where your website is.
absolutely. So Coordisc, Coordisc. It's from
C O
coordinated.
O O CORRD.
No, COORDISC. It's from Coordinated Discovery.
Coordisc. Excellent. And you're also on LinkedIn and.
Yes, I'm on LinkedIn. You can reach out to me directly at Noah P. Healy, NOAHPHEALY, at yahoo.com. And those are the good ways to get in touch with me.
Excellent. Noah, for me, this is a really fascinating subject. Fascinating because I know nothing about it. And you know, the whole conversation I've had with you it's just been so awesome because of the fact that, you know, I'm learning something new, so I'm hoping that other people will learn something new as well. And you know, you've obviously hit upon something, and I'm sure there's a whole big vested interest to keep it as it is. But there's going to be some people out there that are going to want to disrupt in some shape or form.
Yeah. The commodity flow rate in the United States alone is $4.8 trillion. And that was sort of that number's a little old. So with inflation, it's probably a lot higher than that now. The European Union is an economic unit that's more than twice the size of the United States. So, you know, globally, that number is a very, very big number.
Fantastic. And Andrew, who's a regular watcher, says it's another school day for him. So it's been a school. Both of us have learnt shed loads today. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing it. And of course, people can get hold of you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for having me here.
Noah, thank you so much. And thank you for taking the time to come and talk to me today. Thanks, Noah.